Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Springfield City Council's first fiscal year 2024 budget hearing. We're joined here in the City Council chamber by the Chair of the Finance Committee, Councilor Allen. We're also joined by the Vice President, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Davila from Ward 6, and virtually we are joined by Councilors Hurst, Govan, Curran, and Walsh. We're also joined virtually by the Chief Administrative and Financial Officer of the City of Springfield, TJ Plant, as well as the Deputy CAFO, Lindsay Hackett. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to receive an initial overview of the Mayor's proposed and recommended FY24 budget. So we will turn things over to the CAFO and Deputy CAFO to make that presentation. Following the presentation, we will allow for questions from members of the City Council. And following the conclusion of questions, we'll adjourn for the evening. Please note, as I presented at the previous Committee of the Whole meeting that we held pre-budget, we have 2 more hearings scheduled next week where we will hear from individual department heads and allow members of the City Council to pose questions to them. That will be followed in the following 2 weeks after that by public presentations of the budget out in the community, as well as public speak out by members of the community prior to our consideration of a budget vote towards the end of June. So we will continue to provide updates of all meetings, but a summary of all meetings is available on the Springfield City Council's website, and certainly we'll work to ensure that we are spreading the word as we approach future hearings. So with that, I'm going to recognize the CAFO, TJ Plant, to begin his presentation. Mr. Plant, I can see you on, but it does look like you are muted and your video is turned off. While we wait to see if you are able to resolve that, we're also joined now virtually by Councilor LeVar Click-Bruce. Okay. Well, we'll see what happens with TJ. Lindsay, are you live? Brendan, can you confirm that everything's good on our end and they can hear us? Yes. I said I'm just looking to confirm that they can hear us. Could they not hear any of the things that I said in the beginning? Okay. Well, then I will start again and welcome folks to the City Council's first hearing of the fiscal year 2024 budget. The purpose of this hearing, for those who are joining us virtually and did not hear the initial overview, is for the City Council to receive a presentation from the Chief Administrative and Financial Officer, as well as the Deputy CAFO, relative to the Mayor's recommended budget proposal. We will then enter questions from members of the City Council who will receive answers to those questions this evening prior to our adjournment. As is noted in the announcement made last week and sent out again today, we have scheduled a series of budget hearings throughout the month of May and June. So tonight's budget hearing is followed by hearings next week with individual department heads to present their budgets and take questions from the City Council, as well as the scheduling of 3 community budget presentations and opportunities for public speak out prior to the City Council's 3 scheduled meetings towards the end of June for official budget votes and consideration. Again, I'll recognize that in the chamber is Councilor Allen, the Chair of the Finance Committee, Councilor Edwards, the Council Vice President, Ward 6 Councilor Victor Davila, and virtually we are joined by Councilors Hurst, Govan, Curran, and Walsh. as well as Councilor LeVar Click Bruce. At this time, I will recognize the Chief Administrative and Financial Officer, TJ Plant, to begin his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for being flexible for not being able to be in the chamber at the moment. Just had to deal with some couple of things. I will have Lindsay run through or put up the presentation so we can kind of walk through the FY24 budget as it was released by the mayor last week. We'll go through some of the drivers, some of the discretionary versus non-discretionary, the FTE changes, and a few of the other kind of major things that the budget buys. And then we'll open it up to questions. And if you have any point you cannot hear me, I will have Lindsay tag in and take over the presentation due to the wind or any other issues they might have.
Am I able to share the screen?
You should be able to.
Okay, there we go. Thanks.
Okay, so right now we're presenting the fiscal 24 budget. That starts July 1st. We gave the budget to the city council last Thursday. And we are glad to start having the hearings. We had a kind of a pre-hearing last Tuesday, and it went pretty well with some of the budget drivers. And to make sure we kind of provide the nice overview, we put together this PowerPoint. So you can go ahead. So we're going to review the process, the revenue, the expenses, discretionary versus non-discretionary, and ultimately the budget decisions. You can go ahead. So per chapter 468 of the Acts of 2008, we have to do a multi-year financial plan, and that's kind of the basis of any time we start the budget, and that has to be released by March 30th every year. So this kind of gives us a high-level view of where the city is going. It's got very conservative revenue assumption and the pretty accurate expenses assumptions as they are for each of the major categories. We can go through this in detail if you want to, but generally speaking, we started out the fiscal 24 budget process with a nearly $22 million budget cap. That is not unheard of or uncommon. That is just showing that what we thought revenue was going to be back in March. And then kind of what revenue, as the process goes on, what revenue becomes. So lately, our budget strategy has really been trying to manage growth, maintain the core services our residents recognize and understand that that we provide as a city. The directive was to have no layoffs. We did not want to use one-time stabilization fund reserves. This will be the 9th year we go without using any reserves to balance the budget. We asked departments for a level service budget request. That is really the essence of what does it cost to provide the same exact level of service in fiscal 24 as it did in fiscal 23, taking into account cost of living and other factors that have happened, whether it's just growth in cost and everything else. And our goal was to be very strategic with any budget reductions that we've had, and then to look at any investments that the departments have asked for, and being very considerate of the long-term implications on what it might mean if we add certain investments to the budget. We can get into some of those. So our budget is $877.9 million, nearly $878 million. It's gone up 7.2% overall, 7.9% on the school side, and 5.8% on the city side. And we are committed to addressing our long-term liabilities and having a budget that's fiscally sustainable and responsible. We maintain the core service, as I mentioned, in neighborhoods, libraries, parks, DPW, streets, sidewalk crew, stump removal, all the things that our residents have grown to appreciate and respect from our budget. Then we did a continued investment on early education. You may note that we have 17 preschool classrooms across the city. We're the first in the Commonwealth to do universal pre-K for all of our 3 and 4 year olds. It's a way to get them ready for kindergarten and to move through our public system. We made a commitment to funding the clean sweep out of Roca, opening community rooms in our libraries, and increase the library hours for the East Springfield, East Forest Park Library branch. And then we also made sure we created an internship program that is starting to grow our employee base to have a feeder system. And we're doing that in IT, program that we're doing in planning and economic development with UConn, the police department, fire department, A&F, DPW. I mean, we're trying to do internship programs. So our students understand that there are jobs in the city that they can be very successful with. But so our original gap was 21.9, as I mentioned. As you'd imagine, after the departments go in and add their requests and what they see as the need for their departments, it grew to 32.1 million. Again, it seems like it's kind of a really high number, but we were able to balance by reducing salaries and personnel adjustments. And that basically means making sure the school department funds the Quebec team, making sure that salaries that can be offset to grants are offset to grants. The DPW and Parks requested leases for equipment. We reduced those to be the annual appropriation for golf equipment in the Parks Department, and we are going to figure out most likely bonding for the DPW vehicles and equipment for the next round of things that they need. School transportation, we reduced by 225,000, and we're going to keep a watch on it because the growth of that has been around 8%, and we want to try to manage that to the extent we can. Debt schedule, because we have debt coming off, we updated our debt schedule to reflect a decrease in our principal and interest payment of 4.8 million. Benefits we were able to reduce by tying out to our employees the benefits and health insurance plans that they've chosen. We originally built in the union settlements just in case we were not settled. As the council's aware, you have ratified numerous union settlements in FY23 and paid out their retros. So the 6.5 set aside for union settlements is no longer something we needed to budget. And then we did some kind of targeted historical spending analysis to reduce department spending earlier. And when we have the department hearings, we can get into all that. Increased revenue, and we, the overall revenue increase 1.75 million. Because the market now is returning well over almost 4% in earnings on investments. Steve Larnigan and I and Lindsay felt comfortable increasing that by 700,000. We have medical and recreational marijuana that we're starting to realize the revenue for. We decreased unrestricted general government aid to match the House, which is the worst case scenario. You'll note that the governor's budget went up 2% for unrestricted general government aid. The House, we built that in originally. The House went down to 1.6%. And so that's the worst case scenario. And then the Senate just released their budget with a 3.2%. So if the Senate budget holds in conference committee, we'll have a little extra revenue for that. And for the first time in fiscal 24, we built in the MGM payment of 2.8 million as revenue because as of now, we cannot spend the MGM revenue due to a law that DOR, or let me rephrase that, DOR advised us we can't spend any of the revenue from the host community agreement that is set aside due to the fact that the law has not kept pace with host community agreements, opioid settlement money, and the host community agreements for marijuana facilities. So until that law is changed, which we have advocated to the Senate, and there's a Senate amendment to make the change, we're hopeful that goes through the legislature during the budget process. And I'll keep the council posted on that because it's pretty important. It's important to Springfield, it's important to most communities, but it's really important to Springfield. And then we are budgeted 5.2 million in new growth based upon what the assessors said makes sense based upon our history. And because we don't need to reserve as much for the overlay account, we reduced that appropriation by $1 million, and that got us balanced to zero. So this slide, we know we're spending $878 million. The key part to know is that, on our revenue front, we do not control our own destiny. We are 62% funded by the state, and the rest is what we control in local property taxes and local receipts. So virtually all of the state aid money goes to the school department to meet our required net school spending, leaving us, and we'll get into the non-discretionary versus discretionary account or spending a little bit later. But the key part to this is the state, all the money we get from the state in Chapter 70 plus our unrestricted general government aid plus transportation all goes to the school department before we can appropriate to our departments. Go ahead.
Can
And
you
you'll
see this on
see-
the screen?
No, you
Because
cannot. It's
That's
cut off in
weird.
percentages. So as you'd imagine, we'll get you the ones without the cutoff stuff, for whatever reason it's not coming up. The orange is the school department, and so they're a vast majority of our budget, totaling 65-66% of our budget. You can go ahead, Lindsay, we'll get into the other stuff. So we were looking at vacancies by department. This was a request by numerous counselors, and we want to kind of show that we scrutinize vacancies every year. We do the budget. Many we build into the budget because it's something that we need. Some we salary save, some we don't. So this is kind of a breakdown of the vacancies, and you'll see. And some departments, it just shows when you have this many vacancies, it's hard just to, like, you look at 311, for example, 3 vacancies out of an 11-person department. That's or 12-person department. That's a pretty significant challenge that Roy has to manage. Dispatch being another one. We didn't change their vacancies, but they have 9 vacancies, and we're allowing them to overfill positions to accommodate for attrition. Elders, this was a request from the department. Employee benefits, we didn't do anything with. So you can go through and kind of see. If you have specific questions about kind of the decision making on it, I could certainly kind of dive into that as we get further. But the key part is all the vacancies we built into the budget are ones that we felt the organization needed to keep providing the services that we provide.
And also just to note, our absences and compensated absences, we build in as well. So we increased that number to 1.2 million.
They won't be able to hear you from there.
So as we've talked frequently about our discretionary versus non-discretionary and the budget decisions that we need to make. Are we taking questions? Mr. President, are we taking questions in the middle or wait until the end?
I think it might make the most sense to wait till the end. That way folks can be back in front of their microphones.
Perfect. So as we've talked a lot about.
Hold on one second, TJ. Counselor Davila?
TJ, would you mind putting that slide you had up there with the department and the change and no change for a second? If you have it available, or Lindsay or whoever had it. Thank you. Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Proceed, TJ.
Thank you. So, we're spending $878 million approximately. And I know you hear us always say, we don't have a lot of control over what we spend because there's a lot of categories that we have to spend just out of the gate. And so just picture out of a $878 million budget, 82% of it is earmarked, whether it's the school department, employee benefits, pension. Oh yeah, there. I don't even need to remember. I can just read it. So we do not have much control over over spending beyond the departments, and we'll get to that in a minute. So you can see 588 million roughly is the school department. Our pension contribution goes to 61.8 million. We pay 32.8 million in employee benefits, 23 million in debt service. We have an annual contract with both Springfield Park Authority and Springfield Museums that are contractual. And then we have the ordinances of the capital reserve and the pay-as-you-go capital. So needless to say, when we're asking to try to manage budget, we do not have a lot of flexibility to make a lot of decisions to really manage um, growth. So this is where the departments are made. It's made in city departments. Police, fire, DPW, parks, facilities, all those departments. That's where our flexibility comes from. And that's kind of where the heartburn comes from as we're trying to manage and balance the budget. We don't have a lot of areas to go to make the necessary cuts without affecting core services. So this is the Schedule A, and this is basically what the percent changes for each department. And you'll notice if you during the budget hearings, we can get into explaining all the variances and the percent changes from each year. But that shows fiscal 23 adopted to fiscal 24 recommended. There's a lot of investment and a lot of maintaining core services. I don't know if we have a question or any questions specifically, but the budget hearings will be a time to really dig into some of the changes and what we actually bought with the departments. And that's the overview. I know it was a lot of information in 15, 20 minutes, but happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you, TJ. So at this time, we'll move to questions from counselors. As TJ indicated, certainly during the specific departmental hearings will be an opportunity for hyper-specific questions, but also certainly open to questions today. And so if you do have a question and you're present in person, we'd ask that you rise to be recognized and deliver your question from the seated position into the microphone as we do during our regular meetings. If you have a question virtually, we'd ask that you raise your hand in the queue. And I'm going to follow the same process that I follow during regular and hearings meetings, of which I'm going to take one in person, one virtual, one in person, one virtual, and so on and so forth. So we'll start virtually with Counselor.
Mr. President, the screen is still being shared.
Brendan, if you could take the screen off there. And we'll start with Counselor Govan virtually.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, TJ. That was a great presentation. The only two questions that came up for me was, first of all, can we get a copy of the slideshow so we can have it? And then the second was the vacancies that you showed, you said that they were built into the budget already?
So those are the ones showing you the decisions that were made based upon every department. And those are the ones that were built into the budget based upon needs of the department. And the answer to your first question is yes, as soon as this hearing is over, we're going to send this out to the counselors so they can take a look at it.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. President.
So just to clarify, that sheet showed the vacancies before decisions were made. So for an example, if a department had 8 vacancies and the note is that we eliminated 3, they were left with 5. So just so that's clear.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Counselor Govan. We'll go in person to Counselor Davila, followed virtually by Counselor Hurst. And before we hear from Counselor Davila, I do want to recognize that Counselor Brown is present virtually. He was not recognized in the initial introduction. Counselor Davila.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, TJ. Good afternoon, Lindsay. Thank you for your presentation. And maybe we can get more in depth at the actual departmental hearings, but just got 3 questions. With the police, I noticed that there was a $300,000 reduction for academy officers. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, so the academy is realistically not going to get started until September. So we prorated the savings for the academy to actually start in September rather than budget the cost of the academy for the full year when we knew it was only going to be 3/4 of the year.
TJ, I had a hard time hearing your answer. Would you mind repeating that?
Yeah, so when we talked to the police department, we realized that the academy wasn't going to be actually starting this summer, that we had the luxury of time to get because we're not going to get the list until July to start the next academy. So we're not starting the academy until at least September, if not October. So it didn't make sense to build in the full cost for the cost for a full year, knowing it wasn't going to start for at least 3 months.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you. Now, with the law department, I noticed that there's a reduction of 4 positions due to reorganization. Can you elaborate on that as well?
Yeah, so we met extensively with Judge Payne, Kathy Breck, Lisa D'Souza, and Alicia Days to go through the actual needs of the department. We looked at all the positions, the current positions, the current vacancies, and we matched up the department's needs to the positions that we had, and then we made upgrades to some positions, and we reduced ones that were no longer needed in the department because they are looking to hire stronger, more skilled attorneys rather than just taking attorneys straight out of school and grooming them. We're trying to attract and retain the best quality talent we have.
I'm going to be honest with you. I look forward to dive more into that. I hear what you're saying, but my initial reaction is that those guys are already like over water with their work. And although I realize we might be getting more experienced lawyers, everybody has a breaking point. So I do look forward to hearing from Judge Payne more about this later on. Just to put that out there, that did catch my attention. Now, TJ, my last question, and please forgive me if I missed something here. Regarding the revenue side with the marijuana revenue, I see that we have $278,000 projected. If I'm not mistaken, TJ, we do have a line item for that revenue, and that money is being funneled back to the respective neighborhoods. Is that process up and going? And can you elaborate on that as well? How is that money being put to use right now?
No, so the revenue that you're talking about is in a neighborhood stabilization account that has not been touched yet. This is the revenue that's coming into the city based upon having 6 bricks, and I'm drawing a blank. We have three now, maybe 4 open now. That's why the revenue is going up.
Okay. So the money that is coming in terms of revenue for the neighborhoods, is that reflected here as well?
That is a separate fund. That's a separate stabilization fund that the council created based upon wanting to carve out a piece of the revenue for the neighborhoods. This money is the general fund revenue.
And would you happen to know at the top of your head how much money that has produced, or how much are we projecting for next year?
Lindsay, do you happen to have a balance? I don't have the balance on me. I don't know.
No, I don't have it handy.
If you guys could, when you do, if you could send it to me, if you could give me the projector for next year and the historical revenue that we have gathered on this account since the inception of the cannabis establishments here in the city of Springfield.
Yeah, we can provide you what we have.
Excellent. Thank you, TJ. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Davila. Councilor Hurst.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a quick question on the slide with the vacancies. Was it unaccounted absences, or what was that term at the bottom?
So uncompensated absences.
Uncompensated absences, sorry. What does that mean?
So we build into our budget a negative budget number to account for the time it takes for an employee when they resign or leave us for us to hire them. So say they're a $50,000 a year position, they leave in July 1st, we have the full $50,000 budgeted, but we don't hire by the time we're done until July. We factor in a series of savings for all the positions. And then Pat Burns, as comptroller, periodically will sweep the unspent surpluses in payroll and put it into the uncompensated absence account, and have it available. So that's a budgeting mechanism and a budgeting tool to help us balance.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Hurst. Seeing no councilors in person rising, we'll go now to Councilor Brown virtually.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank you, TJ, for all the work that you do. There's a little bit of distortion as far as maybe the feed. I'm not sure, but I'm still getting a gist of things. But I do appreciate the work that you do and all the hard work. I always support the things that you do. In the past, I've spoken about the, right now I was adjudicated, if that's what you want to call it, head of the youth when it comes to the city. And I'm just curious, and I know the answer because I asked before, have you had a chance to go to the schools? The most important thing, I think, to our society is student athletes. And we have some of the top student athletes and top, like we just had cheerleaders, we had everyone there. But when you go to the locker rooms, they still have not been addressed. Have you been to the locker rooms at all? Because I've asked that soon as I got to the city council, I asked about the locker room. Have you guys got a chance to look at the locker room? Because I do know the answer, because I'm very disappointed in it, TJ. What's going on with the locker rooms?
So I met with Dan Warwick and Patrick Roach about the locker rooms as you raised them to us. They do not seem to have the same concern that you have raised. I personally have not toured them. I haven't had a chance to.
If you would like, TJ, I was just saying, if me and my fellow colleagues, and I know Counselor Click Bruce is a coach. If you want to go to these other, I don't try to make issues out of nothing, but if we all were to go and look at some of these locker rooms, Central and the different locker rooms and the mold and the different issues that they have to address, it would be something they would probably write about in the newspapers. It would be national news, because it's unacceptable. And I've been asking for that to be addressed for a long time. So maybe you haven't been there, and I appreciate everything you've done. Believe me, you've done you can't address every single issue, but I've been asking about these locker rooms. So maybe you don't understand, but I'll go tomorrow and we'll go and I'll put it on TV or whatever you guys need to see. Maybe you haven't seen it, but it's been like that for years. Do you guys plan on addressing the locker rooms for our youth?
So I have no issue going to take a look at them. I have no issue pushing if the improvements need to be made. The locker rooms.
They need to be
Yeah,
made.
the locker rooms are typically a school department cost that they will cost to maintain and clean and do all that. So I'd have to work with Pat and Dan out about an appropriation or funding if the need is there.
Right, whatever bill you need to be done, and if you need the city council to approve it, I'm sure me and my colleagues will do so. Student athletes are very important, and I just really need that to be addressed also. But I don't want to be a naysayer or anything, because I do appreciate everything. I don't want to say the things you don't do, because you do a lot of great things. This is just something that I do need to be addressed, and I do appreciate the work that you do. So if you can help me address this, I mean, I've been a counselor for a while and it still hasn't been addressed. So if you can help me a little bit with it, I would appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Counselor Brown. Please allow the record to reflect that Counselor Hurst has disconnected virtually. I know Counselor Davila wishes to be recognized. I want to go to Counselor Walsh, who has not yet spoken, and then we'll come to Counselor Davila and proceed forward. Counselor Walsh?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councilor Brown, for bringing up the needs of our student athletes. I know last night, those of us that were lucky enough to be in the council chambers and heard those cheerleaders who won a national title, who have some issues with transportation and have some needs. So hopefully there's also some ways of looking into helping out these young athletes, particularly when they're representing Springfield on a national level and they come in second. So I'd be happy to support you on that. TJ, thanks for doing a nice job. And Lindsay, thank you. You're always there and you're so gracious with our questions, because some of this is, we don't understand, but you certainly do. So I appreciate your input. And I'm happy to see that there are no layoffs, correct? So
That's correct.
Plus, no layoffs, all closed services provided, correct?
That is correct. No layoffs, maintain all core services.
Yeah, so that's music to my ears. And obviously, at this time of the year, I think we're all looking to our parks. And I noticed there were vacancies in the park department, but all our summer programs, particularly those for young people and pools, we're not going to have any issues with anything like that, are we?
No issue. No issues. They're funded for pools, splash pads, even 5 Mile Pond is covered. The only concern and after school programming, the only concern is like we had last year is the hiring of lifeguards. So we're fully funded to open them all. We just need to make sure we get the lifeguards in place to safely open them.
Okay, now lifeguards, do they have to be city residents? Or what's the problem with them? Is it they don't have the right requirements or?
No, we just didn't have enough qualified lifeguards that were willing to, we increased the salaries or the hourly rate because we were trying to compete with the state and others.
Right,
There just wasn't enough lifeguards to go around.
wow, yeah, because I know that's very important, especially, the services that we do provide for the city, which is surprising to me because those jobs are always so hard to get in the past.
This whole hiring on virtually all positions across the city has been a challenge in a post-COVID or COVID world. And now heading into post-COVID, it's been a tremendous challenge for the city as a whole.
Okay, and I noticed that my other colleagues and myself, Councilor Govan, and we're all concerned about vacancies. Now, the vacancies that you listed, like you have 5 vacancies in the park, does that mean you're going to fill 5 positions or does that mean they're 5 people short?
That means at the time we had the budget, there were vacancies that we looked at. And when it says no change means we're going to fill all those vacancies.
Oh, you are going to fill them.
And if it talked about a change, it means we negotiated with the departments or discussed with departments what their actual needs were. Because we had positions that were vacant for the last 7 years. And we're like, are you actually going to fill this position or do you need something else? And so we were able to work on what the true need was for the departments.
Okay, so, and again, last night, one of the discussions we had was on marijuana and marijuana revenue. To me, that seems like a low number.
So that's the additional amount. I don't know, Lindsay, if you have the full amount. That's the additional amount based upon having more establishments open.
Yeah, I certainly thought with one of the
It's
reasons.
yeah, so it's a conservative estimate, because there were changes, that the state made to the revenue that you can take in per HCA's. So it is a conservative estimate. It's broken up over about 3 lines, so I don't have the total marijuana revenue immediately, that I can tell you right now. But yeah, the 200,000 is the increase over the previous year's estimate.
Oh, okay. And TJ, I don't know if you wanted to get into it now or more detail. What's this restriction with MGM money?
So every city in town, or virtually every city in town in Massachusetts is getting opioid settlement money for the opioid addiction. And the legislature said we couldn't spend it for the stated purpose of opioid settlements. So then we raised the fact that we have host community agreement with MGM, and we said we'd like to get that appropriated. And they said, no, you can't. The 12 million you have set aside, you cannot touch until the state law, which is Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53, gets changed. It has to flow to free cash. And we don't want it to flow to free cash. We wanted to have it segregated for the purposes in the host community agreement, for the purposes of opioid settlements, and the purposes of the host community agreements with the marijuana establishments. The law has not kept pace with the revenue coming into the various cities and towns. And we asked Senator Oliviera to offer an amendment to the Senate budget to keep the conversation going and get it authorized there. I don't know what they've done with the amendment yet, but it is in there, ready to be debated this week.
Yeah, because we're not the only community impacted by that, right? Or is it?
Sorry, I
is it-
missed the question.
We're not the only community impacted by that.
We're the only community with MGM or casino revenue, the way we build it in, or the way we negotiate our host community agreement. No other community has the community impact fund that we have. And we showed the state, the Department of Revenue, the host community agreement. They said that's all well and good, but you still can't use it the way you think you can.
Oh, that's not good. So it's like state law superseding city ordinance?
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
But as far as the opioid funding, that does affect other cities and towns with that funding as well. It's the same for them.
Correct. That's almost every city and town that's been impacted by opioid abuse, which I would imagine most, if not all, have been.
Yeah. So that's like your hands tied behind your back. So let's hope that gets resolved. Well, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Councilor Walsh, Councilor Allen, followed by Councilor Brown.
Thanks, Mr. President. I know we asked for a copy of the presentation. Councilor Govan asked for that, so that's great. I have a couple basic questions. How many, I can't hear that well here, so pardon me if I'm repeating a question. The sound isn't good on a lot of the remote people.
Counselor Allen, I did check with Focus relative to that. What the issue is normally when we hold these meetings, there are more people in the chamber, and that soaks up some of the echo. So what we're hearing in the chamber is an echo. So for folks that are participating remotely, when you do speak, if you could just slow down a little bit, that would allow for those of us in the chamber to hear a little more clearly. Counselor Allen, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Mr. President. So, TJ or Lindsay, what is the total number of vacancies? I saw them broken down with, but what's the total number we're going into in this budget?
Liz, do you have that now? I know we're working on it for a request.
Yeah, Counselor, that's a really hard question to answer. I can give you the number of vacancies that were at the time when budget requests were submitted, but we're hiring every day. So for me to say at this moment in time what the vacancies are, it's kind of hard for me to say exactly right now. So
Can you give
what
a
I can do, what I can do is I can supply you with the vacancies that were submitted with the budget requests and the roster at that time. And that's probably the best way to get you a number that makes sense.
Can you give a range? I'm not really worried about the exact detail number as much as, is it more than 60? Is it more than 80? Is it?
Yeah, there's 60 in the police department alone. So
Yeah, I would say probably 75 to 100.
About 100?
I'll pull it up right now.
Okay, all right, that's good, just have a range of it, okay. And I understand that the police ones are, different because we're struggling to hire police, but the other 40 or whatever the other number is, are they actively being pursued, or are they just, holding placeholders?
No, we are actively pursuing to fill all those positions. The issue we have are we're not getting the applicants. We've had positions get 0 applicants, 1 or 2. The 1 or 2 are not remotely qualified. Residency's been somewhat of a challenge for some of them. So there's just a lot of things. But the problem is, this isn't just Springfield. This is across the country and all places. I don't know where all the workers went, but they certainly aren't applying for many of the jobs that are vacant across Massachusetts. And I mean, it's not unique to Springfield.
And that number is 140.
140 is what number, Lindsay?
140 was the amount of funded vacancies we had during the budget process.
Okay, thank you.
But
Yeah,
to put it in perspective, Counselor, 65 of which are actively posted right now. So that's why it's a moving target that Lindsay spoke about.
Okay. All right, that's good. That's good info. That's all we need. The only level of detail I need at this point. My other question was, and this is going to sound, we talk about budget gap every year, and yet you come here and have solved the budget gap or something. Could you explain? Yeah, I know you said it was 21 million. As you come to us today and present it to us, have you solved the budget gap or have you not?
The budget's fully balanced and it is solved. That's why, a budget is your best thinking at any given time. So when we put together the budget gap in February, it changes to March, changes to April. We get new information from the House Ways and Means Committee, from the Senate Ways and Means Committee. We get, new information from the governor. We get all this information. We get a net school spending number. So it's all just fluid up until the time we decide to finalize the budget and be balanced. The issue we have, even the budget we're doing now is fluid, and it's our best thinking as of, May 23rd. And that's how our budgets work. But, we feel confident that we are fully balanced and that we are ready to approach fiscal 24 in a strong financial position.
Okay, no, that's a good answer. On the school department side, which I know that there's a big increase, just two numbers there. I know we're talking about we have full funded all day preschool. Can you separate out how much that is? How much that? I don't need it right now, but I mean, can we tell? Because that's a big deal. It's been a big deal for 10 or 20 years, and in the state, et cetera. And I know that we're the first school system to achieve that, if I'm not mistaken. Would you be able to give us a number for how much that costs?
Absolutely. I can work with Pat Roach and get that number.
And is that part of the, what's that piece of legislation which has caused the school number to go up so much? School,
Student Opportunity Act is it, but I really started prior to that. And the investment started when the superintendent, the mayor, and everyone started to realize that we needed to get universal pre-K and start a serious approach to it. In addition, the mayor has convened kind of a summit of early education providers to start looking. We're doing a study, a needs assessment study on our birth to 5-year-olds. So we're really taking a heavy look or deep dive into early education in the city.
okay. No, that's great. I was always in favor of that. Now that we're there, and just want to know what the number is. Okay, I'm all set for now. Thanks, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Allen. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. Once again, TJ, I do appreciate the work that you've done. I have a very intensive background when it comes to budget planning and execution. So when you talk about the actual budget, I do know, and I'm sure you know, that it's forecasting, and no one forecasts a budget yearly. I'm sure you should forecast it 3 to 5 years out, and you plan and adjust properly. Am I correct?
That is correct.
From the data, because you do know I work with the state, so anyone you speak with, I do know the legislation, I do understand all of that stuff. The way that it's teetering, and I'm just being honest, we need more help on the Parks Department end. Pat need more help. I think the police, they need more help because they can't find anybody want to work there. So it's like, I mean, are you guys doing anything? And I know you got a hard job, but what are we trying to do to get some of these? Some people, they'll sit there and it's harder than what it seems to actually get this type of employment in place. I know people who need employment. So if you need people, I can tell you, but are you guys got anything set aside to kind of like try to implement some type of employment strategy? Because I know a lot of people might judge you guys and say, well, why ain't you hiring? It's harder than what you think. Is there anything you guys put in place to hire? Because it's going to be almost impossible to hire police officers.
So yeah, so we put in place a lot of, HR has done walk-in Wednesdays to try to recruit and retain. We've got recruitments going on throughout all of our high schools and community colleges and colleges. We got a lot. We're doing everything we can think we can do. We're doing. We're trying to attract and retain and make people aware of the jobs that exist. We're doing that internship program we talked about earlier in the presentation. We're doing. We're just, doing the best we can to fill all the positions, knowing the needs there, and that if it doesn't get filled, then services don't get provided, and then the residents get frustrated, and then we're running in a vicious cycle. So, could there be more we're doing? Probably, perhaps. But I talked to HR just yesterday and today, and all the interventions and recruitment they're doing, it's just not yielding results. But that's not just Springfield only.
Yeah, and I understand. I'm just curious because I do know it's very difficult. But I do appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Counselor Brown. Are there any further questions from members of the council, either virtually or in person this evening? Counselor Davila?
Thank you, Mr. President. TJ, I just want to circle back to what Councilor Brown was talking about before with the locker room situation. I know that Councilor Brown has advocated on this issue several times in the past. I know you did mention that we have to look at the school budget, but for a potential solution, can we also look at the facilities department to maybe help out the students with appropriate lockers?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is Pat Sullivan and John Carrigan still provide the facility services to the school department. And it's all their tradesmen. I know the tradesmen are paid for by the school department, but we have an MOU with the Parks or the Facilities Department to help the school department run their buildings. Now, I don't want the council to think that I have not had this conversation. I've not looked into it in the sense of how bad they may or may not be. I've had the conversations and I've been told they're adequate. Now, I have no reason to doubt that they're not, but I also have no reason to realize that, Councilor Brown's been talking about this probably 3 or 4 years now anyway.
Right.
And so it would be Pat and John Carrigan that would help guide the conversation. I think we should pull them into the conversation. And if a tour is necessary, let's take a tour and then have a conversation with the school department of what really needs to be done. And what, are the root causes, if there are root causes, and go from there.
Right. Well, TJ, thank you for that. And let me reassure you, at least for myself, I'm not thinking otherwise, but I'm just trying to think outside of the box here because I believe in not only presenting the problem, but also identifying the problem, but come up with solutions. And so just thinking outside of the box here. But I think this is important. Councilor Brown has brought up in the past. Yesterday, we have all these cheerleaders here. It was a City Hall trembled, and this is the future of our city as well. So I look forward to have a continued conversation on this item as well, aside from the law department. But thank you, TJ. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Davila. Are there any further questions from councilors, either virtually or in person? Councilor Allen?
Thanks, Mr. President. I think this is my last entry for tonight, and that is TJ or Lindsay. Do we ever have a breakdown? Well, kind of two questions. One is a breakdown on how much it costs. Like the thing that's prompting my question is the full day preschool being funded, if you will, and the Student Opportunity Act, which actually causes a lot of expense, I guess. Or investment on the school side. Those kind of projects that are done in the school department, do we have projects like that done on the city side? Like where we actually say, in this department of 10 people, 7 people are kind of keeping the lights on and 3 people are working on a new project that's going to make life better for us? It doesn't seem like that. I mean, that's a way that I did budgeting in a prior life. That was one way of actually they said, what's your budget for keeping the lights on, just keeping going, versus development projects and things like that. Do you break it down that way at all?
No, we have the conversations that are talking about the investments that we want to make and what we're going to quote unquote buy. The issue that we struggle with on the city side is we do not have a ton of new revenue. So that causes a problem. So just to look at the school department, the way the school department Student Opportunity Act, they just got $38 million more than they had last year. And I think that's fantastic. And if you look at the pre-K, once you have the students in your count as the formula for enrollment, it then adds a number to their budget to Chapter 70, thereby it grows even more. So if we had the luxury of having a lot more money to invest, rather than just fight to maintain services, then I think we could be having a different conversation. Because right now it's, all right, here's the maintenance budget is kind of what you're talking about to keep the lights on. And then here's kind of the investments. And so we take it to, hey, we know we have to do this to keep everything going, but man, our residents and we want to provide these services. So what are we going to invest in? And I'll use the Roca crew, for example. Litter has been on everyone's minds these days to help the city look great. we're doing a contract with Roca to get expanded crews for fiscal '24. Now, that was a strategic investment where we would put 450,000 aside for Roca, but it may have to come at the expense of somewhere else, and that's the challenge we get challenged with every year.
There was an article in today's Boston Herald, which I heard about, so I bought it, and it was about speed tables, that Boston's making a major investment. Mayor Wu is expecting to install a lot of new speed tables. They're having the same issues that we're having with safety and traffic, et cetera. And I'm just thinking, like, let's just say we decided to put in 10 new speed tables. I don't know what they cost, but they must cost a few $1,000s each or something. Does that just come up in that department's budget, and Mr. Signoli's budget, or is there a set aside money over there somewhere, like we did with the sidewalks, where there's money that's set aside for that kind of improvement? You don't have to answer it now. I'm just.
No, I mean, the quick answer, Counselor, is if it's raised by the department as the expert in that industry or area, that this is something we should look at, we look at everything. So like it may not get funded because we don't have the resources to do it, or the sustainability piece of it. But we look, if Chris raised it, we would look at it and discuss it and make a decision. And maybe we want to do this, but let's find a grant or some other funding source. But that's typically how we do it.
Okay. I'm good for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Let the record reflect that Councillor Curran also disconnected virtually. We'll go to Councillor Walsh, followed by Councillor Davila.
Thank you, TJ. Interesting. I was just going to ask you about grants, because I was wondering where it fits in the city budget. I know the school department gets a lot of grants, but on the city side, how much of our revenue, because that must help with some of the costs to get grants in the department. Have we been getting as many? Is that a lack of personnel, or?
No, we've been getting a fair number of grants. The issue we're having is we just hired a grants director because our grants director's been vacant for over a year now. We finally found someone to come do the job. Sequoia Malone came to us from the school department. We're thrilled to have him. And then, so we have a targeted investment in grants. We're trying to make sure we go after the grants that makes sense. But we do have, Lindsay, we can get the number of grant funds that the city has on the city side, because it's more significant than you realize when you actually look at it all kind of totaled up.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, what the percentage of the grants.
Yeah, so we'll have that for our next meeting, or send it, if we have it early, we'll send it out to all the councilors.
Okay, and do we do any contracting with the sheriff's department to reduce some of our costs? Are they involved at all?
Yeah, so we fully funded, I think, 5 sheriff's crews this year. So that's able to we pay for the supervisor, and they provide services to us, and then their folks get on-the-job training, which helps them later on. And then we also did the Roca crew to kind of help clean up stuff. So we're doing everything we can do in the most cost-effective manner to continue to make the city look good and run well.
And the internship program, are they paid or unpaid?
Some are paid, some are unpaid. We try to do paid ones for the ones that aren't class credit. And then the ones that are class credit, sometimes the school says you cannot get paid as long as you're getting credit. I don't know why, but we've had a few of those.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor Walsh, Councillor Davila.
Thank you, Mr. President. TJ, I hope this is my last question for the evening, but you did mention ROCA several times, and it's a program that is yielding some results. But did I hear you correctly saying that there's $250,000 allocated for that program?
Council, the number is $450,000 to allocate it for the program.
$450,000 for ROCA. Okay, and that will be on the pad, right? On the parks?
Correct. That's under Pat Sullivan and his Parks Department.
Okay. Very well. All right. Thank you, TJ. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councillor
everyone.
Davila. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just had a follow-up with what my colleague had asked. And what is ROCA supposed to be doing?
So ROCA is, they have crews to do like kind of diversion programs for that folks that get in trouble with the law. I wouldn't say incarcerated because I'm not even sure it's that far, but it's a way to give
Well,
jobs.
I know what their program does. I'm just saying, what would that funding
Oh,
go
that
as
funding
far as
will
Park
allow
Department
us
related?
to hire numerous crews to span out across the city to help keep it clean and keep it looking good.
Okay. And I do, it's not that I have an issue with that stuff. I just would hope sometimes, like even ROCA, because I don't think they have the capacity of individuals to sustain $250 worth of cleaning. Maybe they would outsource it, 50,000 here, 50,000 there, because that just sounds like a large number, just based on what they actually do. But I also know when it comes to the Parks Department and Pat, he needs as much help as he can get because he does, I mean, everything. I mean, you guys can't pay the man enough. He's one of my favorites, you know, when it comes to keeping things clean, the parks, even the trees. Like in my area, you guys have an issue where now you guys still have the goal where you guys are trying to plant a bunch of trees, correct?
Yeah, so we have the forestry division that's fully funded in this budget. I mean, the key part about all these, you know, the sheriff's crew, ROCA, Northern Tree, they're all force multipliers because we don't have the employees to do everything in-house. And that is the way Pat gets it done, is to have the extra help to do all of the stuff you're talking about, Counselor.
Okay, no, so I appreciate it because I've had constituents ask me about that stuff. And I mean, they don't understand, you know, the actual, the workload, you know, because even with the actual forestry, it doesn't imply a lot. So I always commend you on what you do, and I commend Pat on what he does. You guys do a fantastic job. I mean, it's a lot of work. I would hope, though, when you guys, you know, doing some of that resources to do some of the cleaning, if maybe we can come to the table and maybe resource it, allocate some of the funding, split it up a little bit to different organizations that are right in the actual community. But like I said, I'm not going to sit there and anyone can micromanage. You know, you did a great job as far as implementing, you know, the actual idea. But in the future, I would want to maybe see if we can maybe enhance it. But I do commend you for the idea. And thank you for at least coming up with it. And thank you for your work. And thank Pat for his work. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Brown. Are there any further questions from members of the council, either virtually or in person? Seeing none, before we adjourn, TJ, I just had a couple of questions myself. We talked a lot tonight about the increases in the budget, both from discretionary and non-discretionary spending. I just want to break it down a little bit. What is the total increase on non-discretionary? Do you have that in front of you?
I do not. Lindsay, I don't know if you have the change from fiscal 23 to 24 in non-discretionary.
Are you looking for the change in dollars?
Yes, but if you only have percent, I'll take that too.
No, I do. Hold on. So 45.6 million
And then
increase in non-discretionary.
And what's the discretionary number?
13.3.
And the primary way that you're intending to balance is based on new revenue?
Well, new revenue, targeted expenditure reductions that have no impact, generally speaking, and just strategic decisions that we needed to make.
And your new growth number that's included in the recommended budget, do you know what the breakdown on that is in terms of residential versus commercial?
I will have to defer to Patrick on that one. I want to say most of it's residential, but I do not know entirely. And I'll have Patrick get an answer for that one.
All right, we've got time. Thank you very much. That's my question for this evening. I'll say one more time, are there any further questions from members of the council, either virtually or in person? Seeing none, I want to say thank you to Focus Springfield for being available for this first budget hearing. Thank you to all the counselors and the finance team that were able to attend. Just as a preview, our next round of hearings will be next week, Tuesday, May 23rd and Tuesday, May 30th, both at 5:30 p.m. I'm sorry, our meetings next week are Tuesday, May 30th and Wednesday, May 31st. My apologies. Those will both be at 5:30 p.m. in this room, and that is where we will have the departmental presentations. That will also be available in a hybrid format as well as broadcast on cable channel and on the Springfield Municipal Meetings YouTube page. And again, we'll continue to send out the schedule as we approach future meetings. With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion was made by Councilor Edwards, was seconded by Councilor Davila. With that, we will stand adjourned.
Good night.